testimony from 1935, and to someone who's perhaps not quite so sure of his words. I refer to US President Donald Trump. You might have heard this in the news bulletin just a few moments ago, suggesting disinfectant, as in injecting it, could be a cure.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
I mean, that would be frightening enough if he was the leader of the local council. The idea is President of the United States of America, and it even toys with the idea. Could we inject people with disinfectant? Man alive, we're doing that later in this hour. So as we heard from Lord Mingus Campbell, it's not such a united kingdom. Scotland seems to be ahead of the rest of the country, talking about their plans for easing lockdown restrictions. Senior Conservatives in one instance supporting what she said, in others saying we need to get back to work for the economy, and particularly for one sector, of course, the hospitality, pubs, clubs, bars. 1 million jobs on the line? LBC's Matthew Thompson reports. Matt.
As the number of new infections and the numbers of deaths have both started to reduce, admittedly slowly, attention is naturally turning to how we lift the extraordinary lockdown measures. And so far, the UK government has refused to map out exactly what that would look like. They've set out instead a list of 5 tests that must be met before it happens. But yesterday, the Scottish government did publish something more of a roadmap as to what lifting the measures might look like. Here's the Scottish First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon.
So a return to normal as we knew it is not on the cards in the near future, and it is really important that I am upfront with you right now about that. What we will be seeking to do is find a new normal. So that means possibly for the rest of this year and maybe even beyond. And that's why talk of lifting the lockdown as if it's a flick of a switch moment is misguided. Our steps, when we take them, will need to be careful, gradual, incremental, and probably quite small to start with.
But that led to questions to the UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock at the Downing Street press conference last night as to whether the UK government needs to be more transparent about what comes next.
I understand the thirst for knowledge, but the tests that we've set out, which are the basis from which others, for instance, the Scottish Government, have then developed their plans. Those tests are the critical tests for when changes can be made. And the reason that we have clarity on that message is that it has succeeded in bringing down and flattening the curve, but we are not through that yet. And there's an awful lot of work that still needs to be done.
And amid suggestions that Scotland and Northern Ireland might lift their lockdowns separately from the rest of the country, Matt Hancock and the government's chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, were keen to stress the importance of the UK-wide efforts to control the virus.
I think that the country has essentially moved together. And you can see that in the flattening of the curve, which has essentially happened in all regions and nations of the UK together.
Well, just to echo that, the scientists are all working together, and actually we're very closely working with the chair of the Scottish Science Advice Group. This is very much a unified approach to looking at the different options and the impact that they can have in terms of social distancing, which is the key thing.
And the Labour Party, Nick, has repeatedly called for more detail on what lifting the lockdown might look like. As you mentioned at the beginning, there are whisperings of disquiet amongst Conservative MPs worried about the impact to the economy, amid growing criticism and concern that the government should start treating the British public like grown-ups and tell us what's going to happen next.
Matthew Thompson reporting 9 minutes after 7. Let's get detail on that detail then from Labour's Shadow Home Secretary, Nick Thomas-Symonds, who joins me now. What is it that you want to know in more detail? Good morning.
Good morning to you, Nick. And what we're looking for is for the government, the UK government, to publish its exit strategies we've been asking for some time, and to be open about its approach to the different options that are available for easing the lockdown. And what we would like to see is the government to set out how it's going to approach that. And we can see then, Nick, the sectors most likely, for example, to see restrictions lifted, we can look at the economic impact, we can look at the public health impact, and that is so important, not only, of course, for the public, the vast majority of whom have observed the necessary guidelines in this lockdown to see the end of this journey, whenever that might be, but also vitally for our public services to be able to plan properly for when these options come.
How alive do you think the government is to the economic impact? We're talking about potentially millions of jobs here.
I hope they are very much alive to it, Nick, because firstly, of course, we have to save life. We have to minimise the loss of life throughout this coronavirus crisis. But there has to be that economic support as well. And the Chancellor promised to do whatever it takes. And we will hold the Chancellor to that promise as we see the impact on individuals and businesses up and down the country.
Does the Labour Party still support something such as HS2?
In terms of HS2, we've set out that linking north to south is something that is extremely important, but what we wouldn't do, and we've always made that clear, is give a blank cheque. It is a project that would have to be properly managed, Nick.
Right. You know how much it's costing currently?
The cost of HS2 has been, I've seen obviously the different estimates over the years, but clearly, look, Nick, we're under a new leadership now. We'll obviously be setting out our firm position on this.
Do you know what it's costing?
The principle. I've seen figures running into the hundreds of billions of pounds in the past.
106 billion pounds. That can't be sustained now, can it?
I think in terms of HS2 and in terms of other public sector projects, what you are absolutely right to highlight is that if we are spending, as we should, substantial amounts of money in terms of getting people through the lockdown, then obviously we have to look at priority on other projects as well, and that is what we will do as we come out of this. But also to say, Nick, as well, we talk about HS2 and I understand the concerns on that. What we can't do either is reward the British public and all our key workers with another decade of austerity, having asked them to make the sacrifices we have in recent months.
Grateful for your time, Shadow Home Secretary Nick Thomas-Simmons. Let's put meat on the bone as regards the hospitality sector. Social distancing, as you heard from the Scotland First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, is likely to go possibly through this year. Well, pubs, clubs, restaurants, bars will not be able to survive. It's as simple as that. Jeff Robbins is owner of the Wheatsheaf, a pub in Farringdon in Oxfordshire, joins me now. When was the last time your doors were properly open, Mr. Robbins? Good morning.
We're back on Friday, 5 weeks ago.
How are you coping without 5 weeks of takings?
Well, we're very stressed, very anxious and depressed, and very, very disappointed with the politicians that are not spelling out any indication of when pubs are likely to open. Lots of speculation that it won't be before Christmas, which really makes the most independent pubs, which we are, will not pass the chain or anything. We own our pub. Will not survive. It's possible to survive.
Do you have any sympathy in that the government says it has to be guided by the experts, and the experts say we have to see this horrific number of fatalities at least plateauing and starting to decrease before you can start opening restaurants and pubs?
Well, obviously nobody wants to see anyone die. We've actually got quite a lot of family work in the NHS. We're aware of the pressures and anxieties in the NHS. But at the same token, if you're on a salary, which quite comfortably on salary and being paid full amounts of money, I don't think they've really got a grasp of what it's like to sit and watch your life savings just disappear slowly. It's almost like watching them being washed down a river, getting further and further away from you.
Are you able to offer sort of takeaway, delivery service, things such as that?
Well, I think this is something we are looking at. The problem with the delivery service and takeaway, and I don't wish to be negative, is that you are then competing against supermarkets which are buying in bulk.
Right.
So competitively. It is a possibility, Nick, but I think the whole point of the pub, and I don't know if I'm a pub goer or not.
I used to be a tremendous pub goer, yes, and as a younger man.
Yeah, it's the social, it's the interaction.
Of course it is. Yeah.
Well, people assume that people go into pubs, that purely sit there getting drunk all day, but it's quite the reverse. There are people who come in and do that sort of thing, obviously, but the vast majority of people come into the pub is to see their friends, to talk, have a joke, talk about football. We have such a wide range of people.
Of course. I don't wish to pry, but might I ask, and you talk about your life savings, I mean, how many weeks or months can you just sit looking effectively at empty bar stools in the wheat sheaf?
I would think we'd be lucky if we could do about another 5 weeks, and then really we'd have to think about what we're going to do next.
Good luck. Everybody get to the wheat sheaf for the pub in Fanningdon, Oxfordshire, as soon as the whistle blasts or whatever it is that lets us all out of the doors. And I hope it comes round for you, Jeff, and so many other restaurateurs, pub owners, bar owners, and others. We are, whenever possible, trying to lift the mood here at LBC, or at least on the Breakfast Show, and we should celebrate the great work of the world's greatest playwright. I refer to William Shakespeare, born, his official birthday was yesterday. There's some confusion. Why is Nick saying official birthday? There's some confusion. Certainly he died at the same time this weekend at festivals, online festivals all around the world. So we're celebrating his great work. Kenneth Branagh in Henry V.
Follow your spirit, and upon this charge, cry God for Harry, England, and St. John!
An appreciation of the great man's work. That's William Shakespeare after the 7:16 LBC News headlines. Holly Harris.
From this morning, millions of key workers like teachers, delivery drivers and supermarket workers in England will be able to apply for a free coronavirus test. After concerns about a shortage of PPE, 2 aircraft delivering medical gowns and masks arrived in the UK overnight. And in Wales, lockdown rules are being made stricter from this weekend to try to curb the spread of COVID-19. The weather mostly dry and bright, just the odd shower in Wales, a high of 21 Celsius.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Couple of problems on the M1. Firstly, northbound at junction 12 at Flitwick, a lorry has broken down, so one lane is closed, and southbound one lane's closed at junction 16 at Daventry, but that's because a car has broken down. There's been an accident on the M26 eastbound just after the M25 junction, so one lane is closed, and also in Kent, one lane's closed on the M20 westbound just after junction 4 at Leybourne, but that's because a car has broken down. In London, in Vauxhall, there's just been an accident on 9 Elms Lane at the junction with New Mill Road, so there are restrictions in place.
This is LBC.
Right now, we're all doing our bit to keep coronavirus at bay. But if you're reaching for anti-bac wipes, wet wipes or kitchen roll, please don't forget that flushing them down your toilet could block your pipes. That's why we call them unflushables. To prevent sewage flowing back the wrong way into your homes or gardens, do the right thing. Bin it, don't block it. Take care of your home and pop unflushables in the bin where they belong. For more information, visit thameswater.co.uk/binit.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
This week on LBC, we've been hearing from Chloe Umpleby. Chloe is one of more than 10 million people in the UK living with arthritis, and her diary is raising awareness of how the condition can affect people on a day-to-day basis.
Today is the first day this week that I've started to feel better, and it's fantastic. It's such a relief, because when the flare-up is bad, you worry it won't ever improve, and that's the part that really gets to me. I'm not completely through it, so I still can't do too much today, but I was able to get up and sit in the living room for a bit and chat to my housemates. Those are the little things that it makes you appreciate. I'm still sore and still tired, but I know I'm on the up, which just helps so much mentally.
1 in 6 people in the UK are living with a condition like Chloe's. LBC is speaking out against arthritis. It's not all right. It's arthritis. Join us at versusarthritis.org.
If running a business wasn't challenging enough, being forced to operate a business remotely can be the difference between sink or swim. It can be tough to collaborate with your team without the appropriate technology. And as IT experts, Vertigan can help. With Vertigan, you can be certain that your business is functioning at its best. Vertigan.com. That's VIRTIGON.com. Vertigan, keeping your business running.
Listen to Raj go. Polyrhythm, paradiddle, a drum quickly online. Download the app today. This service is provided by Western Union. FX gains apply.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
With Zero, giving businesses of all kinds the tools to take care of the numbers.
28 minutes after 7 is the time. Let me take you quickly through the front pages of the newspapers now. I mentioned in our conversation with Mingus Campbell, the front page of the Times, Sturgeon heaps pressure on number 10 over virus plan, and we explored the fact that the United Kingdom is perhaps not quite so united. We've also mentioned the front page, I think, of the Daily Telegraph, or it is on the Telegraph. Boris Johnson back at the controls on Monday. We're looking at that in more details. I remind you, was it April the 12th? Yes, it was. He was discharged from hospital on April the 12th, so that's 12 days, so that would be what? Again, it would be 2 weeks, wouldn't it, effectively? 14 days by the time. Is that enough? If you've had it or someone you love or know has had it, you'll be able to let me know. Interesting front page story on the Financial Times, which we'll explore in our regular look at the world of finance in just over 10 minutes' time. Chancellor Rishi Sunak preparing to offer a 100% guarantee on loans to Britain's smallest businesses after weeks of pressure from Conservative MPs and the Bank of England. So they'd underwrite the whole thing. But of course, as we heard just a few minutes ago, enormous trouble. I'm sorry, not a few minutes ago, at the end of the previous hour, enormous trouble actually getting your hands on the cash. The Daily Mail, Corona test for millions. Health Secretary Matt Hancock with me later in the hour. Same line for that was the Daily Mail. The Daily Express, mass testing to get Britain back on her feet. And for the Eye, key workers promised tests starting today. The front page of The Guardian tells us that hospitals have sounded the alarm at failings in privately run virus test centres. So we might put that. The Daily Mirror marks the fact that so many people, of course, again, last night took to the streets, opened their doors and windows to applaud the NHS, and they feature a picture, smashing picture actually, of Prince William, his wife and their 3 children leading the nation in effect in applause. And the Sun newspaper, well, I suppose, it's certainly a story. Hairdressers might have to stay shut for another 6 months. Of course, the things with might is that, again, they might not. So they call it 182 bad hair days. Is the front page of the Sun. I see. Okay. Let's talk about this testing. Nick is in Andover. Nick, what can you tell me? Good morning.
Hi, Nick. I was hoping you could tell me something.
Okay, go ahead. I'll try.
It's good that the list has been published now of essential workers. And after you spoke about it this morning, I looked on it and thought, oh dear, we're missing. Our company deals with data infrastructure.
Right.
But then when I looked at the full list, which there's a link to at the bottom of the page on the website, we are there. So that was
oh, right. Okay.
That's a relief, especially considering I'm on my way to work at the moment. As far as the testing goes, I'm assuming that this, as they're saying, you can only have the test if you feel unwell. I presume that means that it's a test to see whether you have the illness now. It's not an antibody test.
Yes, that's correct. It's if you've got symptoms. You sense you might have symptoms, yes.
Okay. Obviously that's good that we're looking for that. But I can't see how... So if Boris Johnson and other people are going back to work after they've had the illness, then it sounds like scientists are still working on the...
they are. Absolutely.
On the presumption that if you've had it, you can't get it again. I presume that's what they're doing. So in order to get everyone back to work, thinking outside of our company, just thinking about, getting everyone back to work, surely we need to know whether or not people have had it or not.
I think initially that remember, of course, and in a way his whole political reputation will rest on this, that there will be 100,000 tests a day by the end of the month. That is where they're going first. But you're right, there is so much other work that needs to be done, but at least it would know, a doctor or indeed a nurse or anybody, or any of these key workers would know whether she is able to carry on working. Safe driving to you with the work you're doing. Thank you for your input. Let's pause that and look at other matters and celebrate. Goodness knows we need to find celebration when we can. This nation produced the world's greatest playwright. His work has travelled around the globe. The greatest actors and actresses ever known to man have taken part in it. Here's one of them, Sir Ian McKellen as Macbeth.
If ill, why has it given me earnest of success? Commencing in a truth. I am Thane of Cawdor. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair, and make my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature? Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. My thought, whose murder yet is but fantastical, shakes so my single state of man that function is smothered in surmise. And nothing is but what is not.
Sir Ian McKellen in Macbeth. Let's turn to Professor Michael Dobson, who's director of the Shakespeare Institute and a professor of Shakespeare Studies at the University of Birmingham. First question, Professor, thank you for coming on. Good morning to you, sir. What's your favourite piece of work by Shakespeare?
Oh, I have favourite productions I've seen rather than particular favourite plays. I mean, I'm fond of all of them. That said, I have a daughter called Rosalind, which it does slightly give away the fact that I very much like As You Like It, for which she's the heroine.
Why have his works travelled the globe and been adopted from everywhere you can think of as some of the greatest actors we've ever seen?
Well, he was an actor himself. He knew brilliantly how to turn everything into a matter of human interactions. His plays contain pretty much samples of every possible way in which people engage with each other